Hi there, welcome to Kneppy Invest. Almost welcome to 2023. 2 days away from when I'm recording this video. In fact, we'll almost say 30 hours away because I'm recording this after trading has concluded for the last trading day of the year on Friday, the 30th of December, which means we can go through my 22 crappy predictions. I originally titled this video when I recorded it back in January, 22 Kneppy predictions, but because of how badly I did, I had to retitle it 22 crappy predictions. So we can have a really good laugh to just see how bad of a predictor I am of the future. My first prediction or forecast was interest rates, and for some reason, I thought interest rates wouldn't rise much. In fact, I thought interest rates would go from 0.1% to 0.5%. However, in saying that, I did better than the Reserve Bank, who thought interest rates wouldn't rise until 2024. So how wrong was I? Well, interest rates right now are 3.1%. The next thing I had to forecast or predict was inflation. And if you remember 1 year ago, inflation was all about being transitory. So that was the spiel we're getting from central banks. Don't worry about the inflation. It's just transitory. It is going to go away. But I thought inflation would be around about 4.1%. How wrong was I? Well, at the end of the year, inflation in Australia was 7.3%. In some other countries, particularly in Europe, inflation is more than 10%. Now on to GDP growth. Now this is where it does get interesting because the last few quarters we haven't seen much GDP growth. But if we go back 1 year ago, we just come out of lockdown and we did see some significant GDP growth in the one quarter. So I was forecasting GDP growth to be at 4.7%. However, we saw it at 5.9%. I have no doubt when we get the next quarter GDP, it is going to be fairly low. And that means that first quarter, which had pretty high GDP growth, we're going to see GDP growth for the last year pull back significantly. And I'm thinking maybe 1%, if that. The next thing I wanted to forecast or predict was property prices. This was a mistake because I am no expert on property. I just had some guesses here. In fact, I spent zero time researching property. Now, you could argue, based off my lack of skill in forecasting other stuff, that I'm an expert in nothing, and I'd probably take aboard that argument. However, I thought property prices around the country would increase, and I thought Brisbane would be the best performing city. So I thought Melbourne would rise by 3.5%. How wrong was I? Well, by the end of October, Melbourne prices had dropped 5.6% during the first 10 months of the year. Sydney, I thought that would rise 4.1%. However, Sydney property prices are down or were down 8.6% by the end of October, while Brisbane, and it's probably my only good forecast, I thought Brisbane prices would increase by about 6.5% and would do better than Sydney and Melbourne. And I was right on this because Brisbane, by the end of October, were up 8.4%. To be fair with my next forecast, the XGO, I had no idea which way the market was going to go. I was sort of neutral at the start of the year. So I thought the XGO would fall a little bit. When I say fall a little bit, I'm talking about 0.5%. Now, I could be critical of my little forecast here, but there were a lot of commentators, expert commentators, who thought the Australian markets would rise by over 10% in 2022. So at least I was in the right direction because at the end of trading on December the 30th, the XGO actually finished at 7,039. So it wasn't that far off, but definitely not 0.5% lower. It's about 5% lower or a bit more than 5% lower. So at least I had the right direction and it wasn't any of those perma bulls who I always think the market is going to go up every single year. And in fact, that's actually a good mindset to have because based off probability, the market should rise in a given year. So if you just took one random year, just at 1 year at random, more than likely 60 to 70% chance you will see the XGO rise in that one random year. But this was not one of those random years. This was a year where the market was under pressure, and that's why it did fall, but it didn't fall as much as the NASDAQ. And I did think the NASDAQ would be under pressure this year. I did think there was potential, particularly with rising interest rates. So even though I only thought interest rates would be 0.5%, I thought there would be that threat, that thematic of rising interest rates. So I thought the NASDAQ would be down 5%. So I had the right direction, but I was well off in terms of how much the NASDAQ would fall, because at the end of trading on the 29th, so we have one trading day to go, the NASDAQ is down 33% so far. Now, it was down 35% before trading on the 29th, because the NASDAQ was up something like 2 to 3%. So who knows what's going to happen on the last trading day on the NASDAQ. Maybe it's going to go up another 2%, or maybe it'll go down another 2%. We just don't know. The markets right now are quite volatile. And one of the reasons why the NASDAQ went up 2% was because of worse than expected. Was it worse than expected? But it does look like unemployment is going to start rising. Can you believe that the NASDAQ rallied 2%? Because there is the thought now that unemployment will start rising. We are living in strange times. Now onto one of my worst forecasts or predictions, and that is Bitcoin. I thought Bitcoin would breach $100,000 during the year. And the way I've worded this, will breach $100,000, was probably me thinking back 1 year ago that we would see a rally in cryptocurrencies, and then that froth, that hype in this space would wane away in the second half of the year. But that hype waned away almost the first day of January, because Bitcoin got nowhere near $100,000. In fact, the high point for Bitcoin during the year was 48.2 thousand, and right now it is around $16,000 to $17,000. Well off $100,000. One sector I was bullish on this time last year, and that is gold. And I thought gold would rise. However, it hasn't risen as much as I thought. In fact, it might have come down over the past year. So I thought gold would finish this year at 2,115. And right now, we still have yet to see the finish in the gold trade or the gold markets. So right now, at the end of trading on the 30th of December, gold is sitting around 1,817. I am still bullish on gold in 2023. Wouldn't be surprised to see gold continue on its current rally. It is moving into an uptrend, so I wouldn't be surprised to see gold significantly higher by this time next year. Now we move on to individual companies' share price. I'm not sure exactly why I picked these 5 companies. I'm pretty sure I picked CBA because it's one of the most popular companies on the ASX in terms of the amount of investors holding it. CSL, one of the biggest companies on the ASX. Tesla, probably one of the most traded companies in the world. Novonix, simply because this was a fairly popular company within the group portfolio. And A2 Milk, simply because I thought A2 Milk would go on a run eventually this year, because it has had a bad 18 months prior to the start of this year. So let's have a look to see how far off I was on these predictions. So I thought CBA would be at that $88.51. It finished the year at $102.60. So a little bit more bearish on CBA than the real thing. CSL, I thought would be or crack $300 and finish the year at $305.22. Quite hasn't cracked it yet. It's trying to crack $300, but it is really struggling and finish the year at $287.76. I did think Tesla would drop in share price. Now, if you have a look at the prediction video I released at the start of this year, you'll probably notice that my forecast Tesla share price was 3 times 284, because the company did go through a share split. So I thought shares or the share price in Tesla would be about $284, which was a fair bit of a drop from where it was 1 year ago. But I was a little bit too much bullish on Tesla, because the current share price for Tesla is $121.82. And that share price has fallen significantly in the past few weeks, because Elon Musk is absolutely obsessed with Twitter and he's paying absolutely zero attention to Tesla. Novonix, 1 year ago, Novonix was around about $10. So I did think Novonix share price would drop because I just thought there was a little bit too much hype in Novonix at that point. But I didn't think it would fall that much. In fact, I thought $8.35. Current share price of Novonix is $1.47. So an absolute horrible year for Novonix shareholders, particularly if you've held through the last year. I was a little bit too bullish for A2 Milk. I did think A2 Milk would go on a run, and it is going on a run right now. In fact, share price of A2 Milk has risen by about 25% during 2022, but I was a little bit too bullish. I thought it would finish higher than $10 at $11.65. Current share price is $6.88. And I just had a look at the Novonix share price at the start of the year, and on the second day of trading, the share price did reach a high of about $10.65. So the share price of Novonix has dropped a lot. I thought there would be a changeover in terms of the biggest company in the world. I thought it would transition from Apple to Microsoft, but I was completely wrong. It is still Apple. Apple is still the biggest company in the world. In fact, among the big tech companies, if you call all those companies tech companies, Apple has probably held up the best. However, the share price is still in a downtrend and hopefully can fall a lot from here, because I wouldn't mind picking up some Apple shares. Up until the end of 2021, a lot of Chinese stocks and companies and China itself were falling quite hard, but I thought there would be a rebound in 2022. I thought Alibaba would be up 5% during the year. I was completely wrong in this story. So lucky I didn't buy any shares at the start of the year in Alibaba, because instead of being up 5%, Alibaba was down 25%. Now onto probably one of my stupidest predictions. Well, I probably shouldn't. That's probably being mean on myself, saying healthcare would be the best sector in 2022. And when you think of 2022, the first thing comes to mind is Russia invading Ukraine. Was that in February? I think it was in February. And that really put a bull up energy prices. So the best sector by far in 2022 was energy. A few years ago, we had a record year in terms of IPOs on the ASX, and I thought there was potential we could breach that. So I forecast or predicted there will be 251 IPOs on the ASX. However, whenever you see the market in a downtrend, fairly negative sentiment, most companies wouldn't want to IPO during those times. They want to IPO when the market is in a bull market. That's why we only had 85 IPOs on the ASX. Now, this was a few weeks ago. There might have been a few IPOs in the last few weeks, so maybe the true number here is 90, but still well off from my predicted 251. I was a little bit bearish on iron ore, and I did think $100 a ton would be broken during the year and it will remain below $100 a ton, and it did. So I thought, and it was looking for a period of time, that this prediction would come true. However, iron ore has rallied over the past month. In fact, over the last 24 hours, it has rallied. And when I did prepare this video, iron ore prices were $110 a ton. Now I had to change it because it had rallied another $7, and right now $117 a ton. In regards to energy, I thought energy would be up for the year. I thought energy would be a good sector to invest in. I just did not know it would be by far the best performing sector on the ASX. Now onto one of my successful predictions. So in the electric vehicle space, I thought there would be chatter that Volkswagen Group or Volkswagen VW Group will overtake Tesla market share by 2024. I actually do think this will eventually happen. I think this is almost 100% certainty. And we did see some chatter halfway through the year. Here is one of those articles, because market insight provider Bloomberg Intelligence released a wide-ranging report into global electric vehicle trends and take-up, making a headline claim that Volkswagen will overtake incumbent leader Tesla in 2024. So my prediction, absolutely 100% right. And I've got to take this win because this might be the only win I have had at all during this whole video. One of the hardest forecasts I made to verify whether it's wrong or right is that I did think there was going to be a fair few mergers and acquisitions this year. And there probably was quite a few mergers and acquisitions. And I thought 5 ASX 100 companies or stocks would be acquired during the year. So I went through all the acquisitions, but it's actually really hard. And there was no articles to take me through this whole process. I did find possibly 3 ASX 100 companies. I'm talking about Sydney Airport, which was acquired at the start of the year. Crown was taken over. Also CIMIC, but I can't find another 2. And there is a little bit of uncertainty around CIMIC because it was taken out of the ASX 100 some time ago. Not sure if it was because it was acquired. So possibly 3, possibly 2, maybe even more if I actually did miss a few, because information around this question is actually hard to find. I thought these 3 areas would be really hyped up during the year. Well, when I say thought, I thought maybe, possibly this year, but eventually these 3 things will be talked about more and more. Talking about Web3, 3D printing, and definitely automation. This is going to be an ongoing thing, because I don't know if I've said anything about this in one of my videos before, but everyone, a lot of people are concerned about enough jobs for people. I think the main problem in the future is there won't be enough people for all the jobs unless we really get into automation. And the reason behind that is really low birth rates in most countries, apart from African continent. Even China is being affected by really low birth rates. In fact, in the United States, for the first year ever, the amount of residents there under the age of 18 is dropping. This never happened before. So that is one thing we do have to be concerned about. And that's why automation is highly important. And that's why eventually we are going to start really talking about automation and how to quicken that process up. But it didn't really happen, or hasn't really happened just yet. Now onto the skyscraper effect. So if you don't know what this is, when the tallest building in the world to be built is announced to be built, that is a really good sign that the top of the market has been reached. And I thought this would happen at some point during the year, which would signal the top of the market. It did not happen, but we did reach the top of the market like the first or second day of January. I thought the top of the market would be reached maybe midway through the year. So my timing was off by about 6 months. Now that's it for all my forecasts on the economy, equity markets, share prices, property prices. Now on to the more important stuff, sport. And I did make quite a few predictions here, and they're all absolutely wrong. I was on the right theme here, thinking one team would go back-to-back in the NRL or AFL Grand Finals, but I thought it would be the AFL, and I thought there would be a new NRL champion in the Sydney Roosters. However, it was the Penrith Panthers who went back-to-back. And I did think the Melbourne Demons would go back-to-back. However, we had a new champion in the AFL, and that was the Geelong Cats. Congratulations to both teams. Hopefully the Penrith Panthers don't go back-to-back-to-back, because the last team that went back-to-back-to-back in the NRL or the Rugby League was the Parramatta Eels in 1981 to 1983. And I'm a fan of the Parramatta Eels, and I want them to have that record. I did live in the United States for 8 years, so I do follow all the American sports quite closely, sometimes even closer than the Australian sports or even international sports. And all the sports actually do follow. So I only forecast the Super Bowl and NBA in this video, but for 2023, I'm also going to include the Major League Baseball and the hockey, the NHL. But I thought the Kansas City Chiefs were a good bet to win the Super Bowl in January or early February of this year. They do have the best quarterback, in my opinion, and having the best quarterback can only help your chances. But they were just short of winning the Super Bowl. They made it to the week before the Super Bowl, were beaten by the Cincinnati Bengals in a bit of an upset, and the Cincinnati Bengals were beaten by the LA Rams. And I think the LA Rams are doing really badly this year, about 4-10. And I am thinking about picking the Kansas City Chiefs to win this year's Super Bowl, because I think they're looking pretty good at this point in time. I thought it was a good prediction to go for the Phoenix Suns in the NBA. I thought they were the best team. However, they did lose, what was his name? Chris Paul. And that was it Chris Paul or one of the other ones? They did lose one of the best players during the playoff systems or the playoffs, and that really hurt their chances. So in the end, the Golden State Warriors won again with Stephen Curry having absolutely wonderful postseason thingy, whatever you call it, postseason. That's all you need. Postseason. Yeah, postseason. Now on to the cricket and the T20 World Cup. In fact, in 2023, they got the one-day World Cup, which was a surprise. But yeah, it was 40 years ago where we had the last one-day World Cup. So I'm going to make a prediction on that. But for the T20 World Cup held in Australia, I was really going for, if not Australia, at least someone new, like New Zealand. I thought New Zealand were due for a win in one of these cricket tournaments. They absolutely hammered Australia in the first game of the World Cup, but unfortunately they were just short. And even more unfortunately, the team that won was England. And there are two teams or nations I don't go for in cricket, and England is one of them. The other team I don't go for in cricket, I won't say here, but you probably could have a pretty good guess what country that is. 2022 was also the year of the FIFA World Cup, the Football World Cup. And to be honest, I just had a guess here. I had about 8 teams I was going to pick, and I couldn't decide which team to pick. And I went with the team I wish would win, which was Belgium. So I didn't really want Brazil to win, Argentina, Germany, England, France, because they've all won before. We don't want a team or nation that's won before. We want a nation that has never won the FIFA World Cup. So I thought Belgium was a good chance, but they did not make it through the group stage. And we all know that the winner of the World Cup this year was Argentina. Now onto films and movies, and I even got quite a few of these wrong as well. I thought the biggest box office film was going to be Thor: London Thunder, particularly after the previous Thor movie, which is Thor Ragnarok, was really good. Unfortunately, I was quite disappointed by Thor: Love and Thunder, and it was not the biggest film in terms of box office. That was won by, a bit of surprise in my opinion, Top Gun Maverick. So people absolutely love this film. I thought it was okay, but I don't think I was the absolute target audience for that movie. So anyway, congratulations to Top Gun Maverick. You were the biggest film in terms of box office for 2022. Not only did I forecast the biggest film by box office, I also wanted to forecast or predict the biggest film by opening weekend, because I thought this film, Avatar 2, The Way of the Water, or whatever it's called, would absolutely smash all other films in 2022 by opening weekend. However, it did not, and neither did Top Gun Maverick. But the film that was or had the biggest opening weekend was a bit of a pleasant surprise. In fact, it was one of my favorite films of the year, and that was Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, I'm not the biggest Doctor Strange fan. However, I'm a huge Wanda fan, and she was a villain in this film. And that's probably one of the reasons I really liked Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Also liked that TV show, WandaVision. That's one of the best shows as well. Was that last year or this year? I can't quite remember. However, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness had the biggest or largest opening weekend of 2022. The last thing I wanted to predict or forecast was the biggest TV show of 2022. And I have come to the realization, as I tried to figure out what was the biggest TV show of the year, it's really hard to quantify this, because all these different streaming sites have different ways of how they quantify how successful their TV shows are. So viewing hours, something like that. We also still have cable TV in the United States, and they look at how many cable TV boxes are watching the show. So that's a little bit better in ways of quantifying how successful a TV show is. But I did think the biggest TV show of the year was going to be the Lord of the Rings TV show called Rings of Power. In terms of controversy, I think this was the biggest TV show because this was highly controversial. In fact, even before it started airing, there were absolute haters of this show, hating the diversity, hating everything about this TV show before it even started airing. So I had to watch it just to see what the controversy was about. And to be fair with you, it was an average TV show. It wasn't spectacular, wasn't awful. So all those haters were absolutely wrong. Definitely they could have done it better, but I don't think it's sort of the TV show I would watch again. But I will be watching out for the second season, and I'm pretty sure they will have a second season. Anyway, onto what were or what was the biggest TV show of the year, I came up with 3 possibilities. And the first possible show that was the biggest TV show of the year was a bit of a surprise. And that show was Yellowstone. I am a little bit surprised how popular this show is. I'm not sure exactly where this show airs. Pretty sure it is on cable TV. And when it did air, that TV station, cable TV station, came out with the viewers, and it had over 14 million viewers when they aired the first episode, which is a really high number in TV land right now. So if you go back 10, 20 years, 14 million people would have been normal. $14 million in 2022 is a high number, which all cable TV shows would watch when they air a show. So I'm a little bit surprised how popular Yellowstone is. And I also watched this show. When it first aired, I think it was 2017, I did hear some negative criticisms about this show. So I didn't watch it until maybe 2019, when it became a little bit more popular. I started hearing chatter about it, so I decided to watch it, and I actually do like Yellowstone. So the next possible biggest TV show of the year wasn't quite a surprise, but I was surprised that Wednesday was more popular than Stranger Things. And Netflix have come out saying Wednesday is moving towards being the most popular show on Netflix. Now, I am watching this show right now, so I don't binge watch shows. So I watched one episode today. I might watch another episode in 3 or 4 days. I'm not the sort of personality that has to binge watch a show. And I do like this show simply because of one reason. That is Jenna Ortega, the actress who is playing Wednesday. She's absolutely fabulous, an absolutely phenomenal actress. And I think she has an absolutely bright future ahead of her. You can just see by her expression, a perfect depiction of Wednesday in this TV show. And the second or third TV show that could have an argument for being the biggest TV show of 2022 is House of Dragon. So this is another show I have watched, and I was surprised about the quality of this show, and I definitely want to see what happens next, even though I do actually know what happens next. So those 3 TV shows have the argument to be the biggest TV shows of 2022. And that's all I have for this look at my 22 absolutely crappy predictions for 2022. This will be my last video release for the year. So if you are watching this video before the end of the year, enjoy the celebrations, enjoy bringing in the new year. More than likely, I will be asleep by 10 p.m. because I like to get up at 4:30 a.m. on New Year's Day and enjoy no one being out. I'm going to take my dogs to Mount Cootha, Kedron Brook, and just enjoy no one being out. So anyway, that's what I like doing. Everyone's different. So Happy New Year. And this will be my final year or video of the year. And look out for my 23 Kneppy predictions for 2023, which I should release on the 1st of January.